Explore global cyber threats, the dark web, and military-grade security insights from a Navy veteran.
North Korea, Iran, a lot of those type of countries. There's a big kind of line or rift between state-sponsored hackers, so hackers that are employed by the government to do intelligence operations or hack other governments, and then the types of hackers that are much more individual, like they're doing cyber gangs or they're just smaller criminal groups that are doing ransomware and blackmailing type attacks. But typically you're going to find in a lot of, especially inside of Russia, there's a lot of these types of things going on. A lot in China. So yeah, it's kind of a mix. But you'll hear more news and events coming out of those bigger countries.
So the dark web, like I always see the dark web is like this big nasty place you buy illegal stuff at, bad things happen. Like is the dark web actually a place that people go to, like criminals go to do illegal activities? What is this dark web?
So in a nutshell, the dark web, typically, if you can kind of think of it as a encrypted version of the regular internet. So there is the possibility that people are using. It's very privacy focused. There's a lot of encryption. There's a lot of anonymous type of stuff that goes on in the dark web. The way it works, really, just to describe it, instead of opening Google Chrome and going to google.com or some normal website, you would open a browser called Tor browser, and then you'd go to a URL that ends in .onion rather than .com. And then there's a lot of encryption that happens, a lot of kind of proxying and sort of things to make that website hard to find and make the activity that happens on that website hard to track. So if you think about it along those lines, there is the theoretical possibility that somebody's using that for normal purposes or non-illegitimate purposes. People maybe just more privacy focused, so they want to have some sort of, maybe there's a censorship concern in their country. So there may be some legitimate use cases for the dark web. But typically, most activity that happens on the dark web is kind of what you're saying, where it is malicious or illegal or things like that.
So the internet itself, right? No one actually runs the internet, right? Like there's not an organization somewhere that runs the internet. Internet is like pretty much like for everyone, free base. Like there's no controlling organization that runs it, is it?
So there's the internet comes in sort of layers. So there's the infrastructure side of the internet, which is basically the physical wires, the towers, like the actual connectivity side of it. And then there are the next layer is the actual websites and the computers that are connected to those wires in that infrastructure. And the level of control and who controls those, both the infrastructure and the websites, is dependent heavily on the country that they're in. So in the United States, there's a lot more freedom around, who can host a website, what kind of content can be on that website. If you post something that's illegal by United States law, FBI and some of our law enforcement will come and stop that and track them down. But we're pretty free over here in the United States with our freedom of speech. But in a place like China, for example, there's a lot more restriction on it. So technically, there is nobody that sort of overarching runs the whole internet on the world. But on a case-by-case basis, especially in China and some of the more censored countries, it's a lot more restrictive on what can be online.
So how does like stuff like VPN IP play like preventing hacking or like being secure on the internet? Does that matter at all?
A VPN?
And a VPN and your IP address.
Yeah, so sort of the way that works is if you have a connection to the internet, you have an IP address assigned to you that is tied to your identity in some way. So you're paying Comcast or some internet provider, and they know that you're paying them, and they know what IP address they've given to you. So when you visit a website, that website sees that your IP address tied to your name was associated with that connection. So if you access google.com, they sort of know this IP address accessed google.com, and if you were to do something illegal or against the rules, then law enforcement could subpoena Google and say, hey, who connected to your computer or your servers to do this activity, and then Google could give that information up. Now when you use a VPN, what's happening is it's tunneling all of your traffic through a big data center somewhere where tons and tons of other people are also sending their traffic through. So there's one IP address that might be associated with hundreds of people, and all those people could be doing illegal things, legal things, And so when Google sees, or whatever website sees, a connection from that VPN IP address, it's very difficult to associate that to one person. So you can be more anonymous that way. And it also has, so that's one side of it. And the other side of it is if it also sort of, if there's somebody sitting inside of your network or somebody that's sort of watching your internet traffic that's a bad guy. So I just kind of talked about the law enforcement or sort of the good guys case for tracking your IP address. But if there is a censorship concern or some sort of bad guy that's watching your traffic, using a VPN can also anonymize your traffic from them as well.
So let's suppose you're on the internet, you went to a bunch of sites, and then you delete your history, right? Where does that stuff actually go? Like, I know it doesn't actually delete; it's stored somewhere, right, forever, right? Isn't it like it's stored in a data center or something?
So the internet history on your browser, like on Google Chrome or something like that, is only for your convenience on your computer. So if you delete your history from your computer, that deletes the records from your computer only. But it's not going to delete the records from the websites that you visited. So if you visited illegalstuff.com and you went there, whoever owns that website, illegalstuff.com, is going to have that record, and they can do whatever they want with it. If you delete your history, maybe somebody else that looks at your computer will not see you.
But it's still out there somewhere.
But the website has the record, and your internet service provider could have a record of it.
And you might not know this. How does it work? Suppose like you're on a illegal activity. Is like law enforcement able to subpoena these companies and say, "Let me look at Jason's internet history"? Or how does that work?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
So if illegalactivity.com is a legitimate business and they're conforming to laws, then the FBI could subpoena them and say, who visited your website, or they could ask your internet service provider like Comcast for who is Jason, what IP address does Jason have? They could say, and then they could start asking those websites, okay, this IP address, did it visit your website, and what kinds of things did they do when they were on your website?
Okay. So how did you decide to start your own cybersecurity company?
So I was in the Navy for a while, and I had a group of friends, met a lot of people there that were super smart, and so when I got out, we just sort of banded together and started a consulting company.
And that's what you did in the Navy?
Yeah, in the Navy I was doing cybersecurity as well. So I'd say the Navy has some of the most advanced cybersecurity capabilities in the world, and so it's an unprecedented opportunity to meet very smart people in that industry. And so, with that network, you can go, you can band together and do all kinds of things.
So what is, like, I saw in your bar as a term called military grade cybersecurity. What does that mean? Is that like way superior than regular civilian cybersecurity, or how does that work?
So if you think about it logically, the United States military is under cyber attack from the worst threats in the world all the time. So the Russians, the Chinese, basically all of our kind of typical adversaries are constantly trying to get into Navy ships, trying to get into military infrastructure all over the place. So because of that, they're kind of have to hold themselves to a higher standard of cybersecurity in order to prevent those guys from getting in. And so basically with that knowledge and kind of with that mindset, it's more than just the knowledge of how to protect things at the highest level. It's also sort of more of you can almost think of it as a paranoid mindset. You're always thinking, once you've been in that environment, you're always thinking not necessarily just about the small fry hackers and like the small types of attacks. You're now thinking, what is the worst case scenario, because you've experienced it, and you're able to use that knowledge to protect not just individuals, but businesses, organizations, everybody.
So what are we doing as far as the government or military to prevent like a quote unquote like a Pearl Harbor 911 cybersecurity attack?
So the government has like huge, all sorts of different initiatives and methods and techniques. They invest a lot of money, they invest a lot of resources and time and expertise into coming up with the most advanced methods on preventing some of the worst cyber attacks out there. So for one example, is that all connected devices in the military have to go through a very strict compliance standard before they're allowed to even be connected. So you can't have, you couldn't just connect this laptop to a military network. It'd have to go through a lot of different checks and balances before it was able to be connected.
Yeah. So when you started your company, Like, how did you convince? How did you get your first customer? 'Cause I'm sure you just can say, "Hey, I'm a new cybersecurity company. Trust me, right?" Like, what did you have to do to prove to a first customer, "Hey, like, you know what you're doing"?
So yeah, we kind of got started, word of mouth. So we met some people in the cryptocurrency space, and we met some people in other tech spaces. So it sort of starts with, I think, a lot of sort of the initial traction of a business starts a lot with networking, and gaining that trust. So people sort of know you, they know your background, and they want to work with you because they sort of know already that you know what you're doing.
And is your typical customer like an enterprise customer, small business, and does it matter what the industry is or how much money they have?
So we typically will work, yeah, we'll work with everybody from startups all the way to very large companies with tens of thousands of employees. And we're typically working in the fields of healthcare, finance, sort of those high target or high priority targets.
And how long were you in the Navy?
I was in for 6 years.
6 years. Can you talk quick about your experience in the Navy?
Yeah, so when I joined the Navy, I went through a bunch of schooling, that taught me a lot of different things about cybersecurity and how to analyze and understand networks and, technology and various things. Then I went on to do offensive work, so I did some offensive cybersecurity type of work. Then I've done a lot of defense work, so protecting the networks as well as, breaking into networks, both sides of it. I've done a lot of development work, and basically just led a lot of advanced types of missions that the Navy needs.
And some, I guess, you got a lot of certifications in the Navy. Did those certifications transfer to the civilian world, or do you have to do that stuff all over again?
So in my field, in cybersecurity in the military, it's one of those unique ones where there is a direct translation.
Yeah, because most of them don't translate, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the skill sets it's harder to translate, but cybersecurity is one of those universal things where a lot of the certifications that I got and that my friends got in the military, they are the industry standard out there.
And you joined the Navy specifically to do cybersecurity?
Right. Yeah, I did my research before I joined,
Okay.
and that's what I wanted to do.
I mean, that's pretty hard to get being cybersecurity. I'm sure you pretty had a high ASVAB score. Were they doing the Navy right?
In order to qualify
Yeah.
to get in. Yeah, I think that, there's ASVAB requirements and there's other things like that. Yeah.
And so, when in the Navy did you know that you want to do this as a career?
Well, I think I've always known, even
Okay.
before the Navy. Yeah, I've always
Okay.
sort of been into computers and things like that.
All right. And so you basically use the Navy to like build your skills up, get more qualified, and then get out and then start your own business.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I joined the Navy is because I wanted to contribute, and see if I could make a difference in that field.